Welcome to the Gaze into Cinema YouTube channel. The Atlantic Slave Exchange, 1441 to 1888, a dull tradition of constrained relocation and cruelty unique. The Atlantic Slave Exchange, crossing from 1441 to 1888, addresses a profoundly nerve-wracking part in mankind's set of experiences. This far-reaching verifiable record investigates the beginnings, systems, and enduring results of the transoceanic exchange subjugated Africans. The assessed loss of life, going from 10 to 12 million individuals, highlights the tremendous misery and savagery of this unfortunate occasion. Understanding the Atlantic Slave Exchange is urgent for perceiving the significant effect it had on Africa, the Americas, and the world. Introduction. The Atlantic Slave Exchange, a barbarity traversing north of 4 centuries, stays quite possibly of the most ridiculously awful misfortune in mankind's set of experiences. This broad history reveals the unpredictable aspects of the transoceanic slave exchange, from its authentic starting points and the financial intentions driving it to the stunning encounters of the subjugated Africans and the getting through results it had on the two sides of the Atlantic. Authentic setting and starting points. The starting points of the Atlantic Slave Exchange can be followed to the late 15th century when Portuguese adventurers laid out exchange relations with West African waterfront realms. This period saw the development of a business framework based on the constrained work of subjugated Africans. Financial and frontier variables. The development of sugar, tobacco, and other money crops in the Americas provoked a significant interest for work. European frontier powers tried to take advantage of African work to drive financial flourishing in the New World. African association in the slave exchange. It's critical to perceive that African social orders assumed a complicated part in the slave exchange. While numerous African realms and pioneers were engaged with catching and selling slaves, this was much of the time impacted by European motivators and the craving for products like guns and materials. The center entry, the excursion across the Atlantic, was a fierce and dehumanizing experience for the oppressed Africans. This part dives into the horrifying circumstances on slave sends, the mental injury, and the high death rate during the journey. Flexibility and social protection. In spite of the impossible difficulties looked during the Atlantic Slave Exchange, subjugated Africans exhibited wonderful versatility and safeguarded their social practices, dialects, and customs, which left a getting-through influence on the Americas. The three-sided exchange framework included the trading of merchandise, oppressed Africans, and money crops between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. This part looks at the perplexing snare of shipping lanes and the products in question. The brokers and European vendors, the jobs of European vendors, slave transport commanders, and go-betweens in the slave exchange are investigated, featuring their financial advantages and the abuse of oppressed individuals. The subjugated Africans' appearance. This segment digs into the encounters of subjugated Africans upon their appearance in the Americas. It investigates the brutal work conditions on manors and in different ventures and the dehumanizing treatment they persevered. Obstruction and rebellions. Subjugated Africans mounted different types of obstruction, from little demonstrations of insubordination to enormous scope revolts. Their battles for opportunity are examined, underscoring the versatility and assurance of subjugated people. Abolitionist developments. The rise of abolitionist developments in the Americas, enlivened by Enlightenment beliefs in the battle for common liberties, is investigated. This segment reveals insight into the people and associations that lobbied for the finish of the Atlantic Slave Exchange. The job of England. England assumed a crucial part in the possible cancellation of the Atlantic Slave Exchange. The 1807 cancellation of the Slave Exchange Act denoted a huge defining moment, prompting the foundation of the West Africa Unit to uphold the boycott. Worldwide endeavors. Different nations, including the US, France, and Spain, slowly went with the same pattern in annulling the overseas slave exchange. Worldwide tension and moving moral standards added to this change. Outcomes and heritage. The Atlantic Slave Exchange financially affected the Americas. The constrained work of oppressed Africans was instrumental in building the groundworks of the New World's economy, from farming to industry. Social and social outcomes. The subjugated Africans brought their assorted societies, dialects, and customs to the Americas, adding to the rich woven artwork of Afro-diasporic societies that persevere right up till now. The scars of bondage. the tradition of the Atlantic slave exchange is as yet apparent in the racial imbalances, segregation, and variations that persevere in the Americas. The persevering through scars of servitude keep on forming the contemporary world. Celebration and instruction, endeavors to recall and teach about the Atlantic slave exchange are crucial for recognizing this dim section in mankind's set of experiences. Historical centers, landmarks, and instructive projects work to guarantee that the memory of this misfortune isn't neglected. Illustrations for the present and future. The Atlantic slave exchange gives a distinct indication of the repulsions of bondage and the need to battle prejudice, segregation, and fundamental imbalances. Understanding this set of experiences is fundamental for cultivating a more comprehensive, even-handed, and simply future. And, the Atlantic slave exchange stays a frightening and tragic part in mankind's set of experiences, requesting thorough assessment and understanding. It embodies the haziest parts of human abuse, avarice, and languishing. Perceiving this dim part is urgent for recognizing verifiable treacheries, advancing recuperating, and making progress toward an all the more and comprehensive world, liberated from the traditions of subjugation and bigotry.